The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council looked like something from a nightmare. Floating platforms held representatives from dozens of alien species, each more bizarre than the last. Blue-skinned creatures with tentacles for arms argued with insect-like beings whose voices clicked and buzzed. Giant floating jellyfish pulsed with angry red light while speaking through mechanical translators. At the center of this chaos stood Ambassador Lee Taemin, his simple black uniform, with the Korean flag patch looked almost boring next to the elaborate robes, biosuits, and energy shields worn by the aliens around him. But Taemin wasn't intimidated. He'd been preparing for this moment his entire diplomatic career. The panic in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emergency alerts flashed on holographic displays showing star maps with entire systems, marked in red, destroyed, consumed, gone. The smell of fear mixed with alien pheromones created an atmosphere of pure desperation. 3 entire star systems, wheezed the Vorthok representative, its breathing apparatus making wet sucking sounds. The creature looked like a cross between an octopus and a tree, with bark-like skin and multiple eyes that blinked independently. The Devourers consumed everything: planets, moons, space stations, our military fleets, completely gone. Not even debris left behind. Other representatives began shouting over each other. The Cathani delegate, a massive creature that resembled a walking crystal formation, projected images of the destruction. Entire worlds reduced to empty space. Billions of lives simply erased from existence. Silence. Council leader slammed all 4 of his muscular arms on the podium. He stood 12 feet tall, his gray skin scarred from countless battles. Wearing the ceremonial armor of a dozen different wars, his species, the Mordok, had been the galaxy's premier warriors. For over 1,000 years, 17 different species have thrown their finest warriors at these creatures. The Cathani sent their crystal warriors. The Vorthok deployed their warships. Even the legendary Zephyrian death squads couldn't scratch these monsters. Morthak's voice cracked with something the galaxy rarely heard from him: fear. All failed. Every single military force in the Outer Rim has been destroyed or scattered. Now we ask... He paused, his pride warring with necessity. Now we ask humans for help. The word humans seemed to leave a bad taste in his mouth. Whispers and clicks filled the chamber. Many species still remembered when humans first arrived on the galactic scene just 50 years ago. They were seen as primitives: no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no telepathic abilities. Just crude chemical rockets and projectile weapons. Tae-min stepped forward with calm confidence. His footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. The Republic of Korea's Expeditionary Command stands ready to assist the Galactic Council. We'll need complete tactical data on enemy capabilities, fleet compositions, and detailed reports from survivors. The aliens stared at him in disbelief. They expected him to beg for more information, or at least acknowledge the impossible task ahead. Instead, this young human spoke as if victory was already guaranteed. His tone was professional, almost bored, like he was discussing shipping schedules instead of facing the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. "You don't understand," hissed the serpentine ambassador, her snake-like body coiling around her platform. "These aren't just ships or soldiers. The Devourers are something else entirely. They absorb technology, adapt to weapons, learn from every battle. They've grown stronger with each victory." Taemin nodded politely. "We'll review all available data. Our analysis teams are quite thorough." "How many soldiers can you spare?" asked the Delphine ambassador. Her species looked almost human except for their blue skin and gill slits. "We estimate you'll need at least 1 million troops for a defensive action." The chamber held its breath. Even the most optimistic estimates suggested humanity could maybe spare a few thousand soldiers without leaving Earth defenseless. "Enough," Taemin replied simply, his voice carrying an odd certainty that made several aliens shift uncomfortably. The Mortok leader laughed bitterly. "Enough, child. We're not talking about pirates or raiders. These creatures destroyed the Cathani homeworld in 6 hours. 6 hours. A civilization that had stood for 10,000 years, gone before their distress calls even reached us." "I understand the severity of the situation," Taemin said calmly. "General Park Woo-jin will arrive within the cycle with our expeditionary force. I suggest you prepare your remaining forces to follow human tactical doctrine." The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages, translation systems overloading from the chaos. No species in galactic history had ever suggested that council forces follow anyone else's orders. The very idea was insulting to proud warrior racers who had conquered star systems before humans even invented writing. Follow human doctrine. Morthak's voice was dangerously quiet. We've been fighting wars since before your species discovered. Fire Taman smiled slightly. Yes, you've been fighting wars. We've been fighting each other. There's a difference. The simple statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. In the sudden silence, the weight of human history seemed to settle over the room. While other species had fought occasional conflicts with neighbors or pirates, humanity had spent its entire existence in almost constant warfare. World wars, civil wars, proxy wars, cold wars. They had turned conflict into an art form. We'll be in touch, Taman said, turning to leave. His calm confidence was more unsettling than any threat could have been. As the human ambassador walked away, the aliens sat in stunned silence, beginning to wonder if they had just made a deal with something far more dangerous than themselves. General Park Woojin stood on the bridge of the Bison's Pride, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the most incredible sight in human history unfold before him. Through the massive viewport, 300 human warships moved in perfect formation like a deadly ballet in the darkness of space. The fleet stretched for thousands of kilometers, each vessel a masterpiece of human engineering and warfare. The flagship itself was a monster of steel and firepower. At 2 kilometers long, the Bison's Pride dwarfed most alien vessels. Its hull bristled with weapons that no other species had ever seen. Railguns that could punch through a moon, missile batteries loaded with nuclear warheads, and plasma cannons that glowed with barely contained energy. The ship's armor was layered with reactive plating that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. Around the flagship, massive carriers disgorged clouds of fighters like angry wasps. Each carrier held over 200 small craft, and there were dozens of carriers in the fleet. The fighters themselves were works of art, sleek, fast, and deadly, with pilots who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Sir, the alien observers are confused, reported Colonel Kim Daeung, barely suppressing a smile as she monitored the communication channels. Her console displayed dozens of alien transmissions, all expressing bewilderment at human tactics. They keep asking when we're going to charge straight at the enemy. Some of them think we're cowards for not attacking immediately. Park chuckled grimly. The alien observers were representatives from various council species, embedded with the human fleet to learn their tactics. What they didn't understand was that they were witnessing something completely new in galactic warfare preparation. That went far beyond simply pointing ships at the enemy and hoping for the best. Let them wonder, Park replied, his eyes never leaving the tactical displays. How's Major Choi's intelligence analysis coming along? She's been working around the clock, sir. Major Choi, so he has identified 17 distinct devourership classes, from small scouts to massive world killers. Their tactics are brutally simple. They rely on overwhelming individual targets with superior firepower and numbers. They've never faced coordinated fleet action or combined arms warfare. The intelligence was fascinating and terrifying. The Devourers fought like a pack of wild animals, all aggression and no strategy. They would swarm a single target, destroy it completely, then move to the next. It was effective against the uncoordinated alien fleets they'd faced so far, but it had weaknesses that human tacticians were already exploiting. Around them, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. Unlike the chaotic alien command centers they'd observed, the human bridge was a model of calm professionalism. Officers spoke in quiet voices, data flowed smoothly between stations, and every person knew exactly what their role was in the larger plan. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Jae-sung approached with a datapad. Sir, logistics report. All ships are fully supplied for extended operations. We have enough ammunition for 6 major engagements, food and water for 3 months, and our mobile repair stations can handle battle damage for the entire fleet. This was something aliens couldn't grasp, the sheer scale of human military logistics. While other species sent out their fleets and hoped for quick victories, humans had learned to fight long campaigns far from home. Every ship in the fleet was part of a larger system designed to keep fighting no matter what. Through the communication system, alien voices crackled with growing impatience and frustration. Human fleet, why do you delay? More colonies are falling while you ... organize. The Devourers grow stronger with each victory. Attack now before it's too late. The Kethany observer, a crystalline being named Crystalline Shard Dancer, projected his concerns directly onto the bridge's main screen. General Park, my people are dying. Every moment you waste here means more lives lost. Why don't you understand? The urgency. Park understood their frustration, but he also understood something they didn't: the difference between fighting a battle and fighting a war. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel, his voice carrying to every ship in the massive formation. All ships, this is Lion Actual. Operation Thunderstorm is now active. Phase 1 begins in 30 minutes. Remember, the galaxy is watching humanity's first real war. Today we show them what we learned from 5,000 years of fighting each other. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across 300 ships, nearly 500,000 human sailors, soldiers, pilots, and marines acknowledged the order. The fleet began to move, not in the chaotic charge the aliens expected, but in a carefully orchestrated advance that looked more like a deadly dance. The alien observers watched in growing amazement as human ships separated into precise formations. Carriers moved to protected positions while destroyers formed screening lines. Heavy cruisers positioned themselves for maximum firepower coverage, and support vessels took positions that would allow them to maintain the fleet's supply lines. Even during battle, "What are they doing?" whispered the Vorthok observer, his tentacles writhing with confusion. "This is not how wars are fought. Where is the honor in this? This planning." Colonel Kim smiled as she monitored the alien reactions. "They have no idea what they're about to witness, do they, sir?" Park's expression was grim but determined. "They're about to see the deployment of humanity's most terrifying weapon, not our ships, not our guns, but something far more dangerous. They're about to witness systematic, coordinated warfare perfected by a species that never learned to fight fair." The fleet moved deeper into space, leaving the confused alien observers to wonder what kind of monsters they had just unleashed upon the galaxy. Captain Yoon Haewon pressed her back against the twisted remains of what used to be a communication tower. The metal was still hot from Devourer energy weapons, and she could smell the acrid smoke of burning electronics, mixed with something far worse, the stench of alien death. Purple energy bolts screamed overhead, each one hot enough to melt steel and loud enough to shatter eardrums. Firebase Alpha had been humanity's first foothold in the Kepler sector, built on a barren moon that offered strategic oversight of 3 star systems. What started as a simple observation post had quickly grown into a fortress when the Devourers detected human presence. Now, 6 hours after the attack began, the base was a smoking ruin surrounded by the most vicious creatures the galaxy had ever produced. The Devourers themselves were beyond horrifying. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies a twisted fusion of insect and machine that seemed designed by nightmares. Chitinous armor plates covered mechanical joints that sparked with electrical energy. Their heads were elongated, skulls filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth, while their arms ended in claws that could slice through battle armor like paper. Worst of all were their eyes, glowing red sensors that never seemed to blink, scanning constantly for new targets to destroy. "Overwatch, this is Ground 1. Haewon spoke into her comm unit, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. She pulled out a small device and painted laser targeting markers on a cluster of Devourers advancing through the rubble. "I have multiple targets at grid reference 77 Alpha, marking for orbital strike." 20 kilometers above, Admiral Song Kunko stood in the command center of the orbital platform Soulshammer, watching the battle unfold on dozens of tactical displays. The platform itself was a marvel of human engineering. A mobile fortress, bristling with weapons that could level mountains. Around him, dozens of officers coordinated the complex dance of orbital warfare. "Ground 1, this is Overwatch. We have your targets painted. All batteries, prepare for danger close. Fire mission." Song's voice was calm, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the command rail. "Danger close authorization granted. Fire for effect." The alien observers in the command center gasped in horror and amazement as the orbital weapons fired. Streams of superheated plasma descended from space like the wrath of gods, each beam precisely calibrated to hit within meters of human positions. The weapons were so accurate they could thread the needle between friendly and enemy forces with surgical precision. The Devourers caught in the strike simply ceased to exist. One moment they were advancing through the rubble, the next they were clouds of vaporized metal and organic matter. The ground where they stood turned to glass from the intense heat, and shockwaves rippled outward in perfect circles. Down on the surface, Haewon felt the heat wash over her position, even from behind cover. The air itself seemed to burn for a moment, then cleared to reveal a landscape transformed. Where dozens of Devourers had been advancing, there was now only smoking craters and twisted metal. "Good effect on target," she reported, then immediately began coordinating her troops for the next phase. Third Squad, advance to the communications array. First Squad, establish suppressing fire on the eastern approach. Second Squad, flank. Left through the maintenance tunnels, her soldiers moved with mechanical precision that would have impressed a drill instructor. These weren't just random troops thrown together, they were the product of humanity's most advanced military training. Each soldier knew not just their own job, but the jobs of everyone around them. When one fell, another immediately stepped up to fill their role. Private Park Min-ho sprinted across open ground under heavy fire, his assault rifle chattering as he lay down covering fire for his squadmates. A purple energy bolt caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a pile of debris. Instead of crying out or falling back, he rolled behind cover and continued shooting, his wounded arm hanging useless at his side. Min-ho's hit, shouted Corporal Lee Eugene, starting to move toward his wounded comrade. Stay in position, Min-ho yelled back, still firing with his good arm. I can still fight. The Devourers had expected their assault on Firebase Alpha to be like all their previous victories. They would attack, their enemies would panic and break, and within hours they would be feeding on the remains of another defeated civilization. But these humans were different. They didn't break under fire, they became more dangerous. Sergeant Kong Dongmin was bleeding from 3 separate wounds, each one deep enough to incapacitate most beings. Devourer claws had raked across his chest, leaving his armor shredded and his uniform soaked with blood. But instead of retreating or calling for medical aid, he continued directing artillery strikes from his forward position. Fire mission, coordinates. Ate Bravo, he spoke into his radio, even as another Devourer claw scraped across his helmet. Adjust fire 50 meters north. Repeat, adjust fire 50 meters north. The artillery rounds landed exactly where he called them, turning another group of advancing Devourers into smoking fragments. Dongmen allowed himself a grim smile before calling in the next strike. In the orbital command center, the alien observers watched in stunned silence. The Cathani representative, his crystal body flickering with confused patterns of light, turned to Admiral Song with something approaching. Or, how do they fight like this? He whispered, watching human soldiers advance through withering enemy fire without hesitation. They should be running. Every other species runs when faced with such overwhelming force. The Vorthok observer, his breathing apparatus wheezing with stress, pointed a tentacle at the tactical display. Look at their casualty reports. They're taking heavy losses, but they keep advancing. This is not natural behavior for any civilized species. Admiral Song's expression was grim as he watched his people fight and die on the surface below. Each red marker on the tactical display represented a human life lost. But he also saw something the aliens couldn't understand. They're not running, he replied quietly, his voice carrying the weight of 5,000 years of human warfare. They're hunting. On the surface, Captain Haywon's company continued their deadly advance through the ruins of Firebase Alpha, turning what should have been a rout into a slaughter of their enemies. The Kepler sector had been transformed into something that defied imagination. What had been empty space and barren worlds just 2 weeks ago was now the most heavily fortified region in galactic history. Lieutenant Colonel Bei Min-young stood in the command center of Fortress Busan, a military installation that had been carved directly into a massive asteroid. The fortress was a monument to human engineering, its tunnels stretched for hundreds of kilometers through solid rock, and its surface bristled with weapons that could crack planets in half. Min-young watched the tactical displays with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Around her, dozens of officers coordinated the defense of an entire star system. The command center itself was a marvel of technology, with holographic displays showing every ship, every weapon, every soldier in the sector in real time. Ma'am, long-range sensors are detecting the main Devourer fleet, reported Warrant Officer Nam Jiohoon, his fingers dancing across his control panel. The young officer's voice was steady, but Min-young could see the tension in his shoulders. 2,000 vessels approaching from 7 different vectors. It looks like they're trying to surround our positions. Min-young's smile was cold and predatory. Excellent, they're doing exactly what our psychological warfare division predicted they would do. These creatures think they're surrounding us, but they're actually walking into the biggest trap in military history. The Devourers had always fought the same way. Overwhelming force applied from multiple directions to crush their enemies through sheer numbers. It had worked against every other species because those species fought individual battles with whatever forces they happened to have available. But humans didn't think that way. They thought in terms of campaigns, strategies, and total war. Across the Kepler sector, the true scale of the human war machine began to reveal itself. What the alien observers had thought was a single fleet of 300 ships turned out to be just the advance guard, hidden in asteroid fields, disguised as mining operations, and cloaked by advanced stealth technology. Thousands of human vessels waited for their moment. Factory ships that were larger than most alien cities suddenly decloaked and began disgorging clouds of fighters. These weren't ordinary manufacturing vessels, they were mobile shipyards that could build and launch a complete fighter squadron every 30 minutes. The fighters themselves poured out like angry hornets, each one piloted by humans who had trained their entire lives for this battle. Supply vessels materialized from seemingly empty space, their holds packed with ammunition, fuel, and spare parts. These logistics ships were the backbone of human military doctrine, while other species hoped for quick victories. Humans prepared for long campaigns. Every weapon fired could be replaced, every damaged ship could be repaired, every fallen soldier's position could be filled. But the most shocking revelation was what humans had done to the moons and asteroids throughout the sector. Entire celestial bodies had been hollowed out and converted into weapons platforms. What looked like natural moons were actually fortresses with enough firepower to sterilize entire planets. Asteroid mining operations revealed themselves to be missile batteries with thousands of nuclear warheads ready to launch. General Park's voice echoed across every communication channel in the sector, reaching every human ship, station, and soldier. All units, this is Lion Actual. Execute Order 77. Show these creatures what total war looks like. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across dozens of star systems, human forces that had been hidden or disguised suddenly revealed themselves. The space around Kepler Prime erupted into the largest military engagement in galactic history. The Devourer fleet, expecting to face the same small human force they had detected earlier, found themselves surrounded by thousands of human vessels. But even more shocking than the numbers was the coordination. Human ships moved in perfect formations that seemed almost choreographed. Destroyers formed screening lines while cruisers positioned themselves for maximum firepower coverage. Carriers launched fighters in precise waves, each timed to support the others. Where individual Devourer vessels might have been superior in raw firepower, coordinated human squadrons were absolutely unstoppable. 3 human destroyers working together could outfight a Devourer battleship by using tactics the creatures had never encountered. One ship would draw fire while the others flanked from different angles, their weapons synchronized to hit the same weak points at exactly the same moment. Major Li Yan he led Dragon Squadron through the chaos of battle, her fighter weaving between massive capital ships and clouds of enemy fire. Her voice remained calm and professional over the communication system, even as explosions lit up the darkness around her. Dragon Squadron maintained formation. Target the Devourer command ships, they're the ones with the larger sensor arrays. Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity today. We're writing the tactical manual that every other species will study for the next 1,000 years. Her squadron of 36 fighters moved like a single organism, each pilot knowing exactly where their wingmates were at every moment. They dove through the Devourer formation, their weapons carving through enemy hulls with surgical precision. When Devourer fighters tried to intercept them, they found themselves facing combat tactics that had been perfected through centuries of aerial warfare on Earth. The alien observers, watching from the safety of protected command bunkers, could barely comprehend what they were seeing. The Cathani representative, his crystalline body flickering with patterns of amazement and terror, turned to his companions. "This is not warfare as we know it," he transmitted through his communication matrix. "This is something else entirely. They fight as if every ship, every weapon, every soldier is part of a single mind." The Vorthok observer, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy, pointed toward the tactical displays showing the battle. "Look at their casualty reports. They're losing ships and fighters, but their overall effectiveness is actually increasing. As the battle continues, how is this possible?" High above the battle, Admiral Song watched from his command ship as humanity's first galactic war unfolded exactly as planned. The Devourers had walked into a trap centuries in the making, and now they were about to learn why humans had never lost a species-wide conflict. The battle raged on, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The final Devourer stronghold was a nightmare fortress floating in the darkness between stars, built from the hulks of 1,000 conquered ships. It stretched for 50 kilometers in every direction, bristling with weapons salvaged from dozens of different civilizations. The creatures had turned it into their ultimate command center. where their hive mind leaders coordinated the destruction of entire species. Captain Wang Taikyong pressed himself against the curved wall of what used to be a Kethany cruiser, now part of the massive structure's outer hull. His marine unit had been fighting through the twisted corridors for 6 hours, clearing section after section of the most dangerous enemies humanity had ever faced. The interior of the stronghold was a maze of alien architecture welded together without any logical design. Corridors from insect-like ships connected to chambers from crystalline vessels, while mechanical tunnels led to organic passages that pulsed with their own heartbeats. The air itself seemed toxic, filled with the combined atmospheres of a dozen different worlds. "Bravo team. Advance to Junction 7 Alpha," Wang commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. His Marines moved with the precision of a Swiss watch, each soldier covering specific angles while advancing through the hostile environment. Their armor was scarred from energy weapons and acid burns, but they pressed forward relentlessly. Devourers they encountered in these final corridors were different from the ones they'd fought before. These were the elite guard, creatures that had survived hundreds of battles and incorporated technology from every species they'd consumed. Some had energy shields stolen from Mortak warriors, others wielded weapons that fired concentrated dark matter, and the largest ones had armored carapaces that could deflect nuclear explosions. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant Kim Hyun-woo as a group of devourers rounded the corner ahead. These creatures stood 4 meters tall, their bodies a horrifying fusion of organic muscle and mechanical enhancement. Their claws had been replaced with energy projectors that could slice through battleship armor, and their heads contained multiple brains working in perfect coordination. The Marines opened fire immediately, their weapons designed specifically for this final assault. Plasma rifles sent superheated bolts that could melt through the strongest armor, while micro-missiles sought out weak points in the creature's defenses. The corridor filled with the sound of weapons, fire, and alien screams. One devourer, larger than the others, charged directly at Huang's position. Its body was covered in scars from previous battles, and its mechanical arms ended in spinning saw blades that threw sparks as they cut through the metal walls. The creature's roar was like grinding machinery mixed with the death cries of its victims. Huang rolled aside as the creature's claws raked the wall where he'd been standing, leaving deep gouges in the alien metal. Without hesitation, he pulled out his sidearm and put 3 shots directly into the creature's sensor cluster. The devourer staggered, then collapsed as its mechanical systems shut down. "Bridge section ahead," reported Corporal Park Soyoung, checking her scanner. "Heavy resistance expected." The final assault on the command center was a masterpiece of coordinated violence. While Wang's team attacked from the front, 2 other Marine units struck from different directions, creating a 3-pronged assault that the Devourers couldn't counter. Human tactics had evolved over millennia of warfare. They knew that overwhelming force applied from multiple angles could break any defense. The bridge itself was a cathedral of horror. Dozens of Devourer commanders were linked together by mechanical cables, their minds merged into a single controlling intelligence. The walls were covered with displays showing the locations of every Devourer force in the galaxy, and the floor was littered with the skulls of conquered species used as decorations. The final battle lasted only minutes. The Devourer commanders, for all their technological advantages, had never faced soldiers who fought with the tactical precision of human Marines. Each Marine knew not just their own job, but how their actions supported the entire team. When one fell, another immediately stepped up to fill their role. "Bridge secured," Huang reported as his team eliminated the last resistance. His voice carried across space to every human command center in the sector. "All Devour command and control systems destroyed. The sector is clear." 6 weeks after the first human ship had arrived in the Kepler sector, the Devourer threat was eliminated, not just defeated or driven back, but completely eradicated through methodical, systematic warfare that left no survivors to regroup elsewhere. Every Devourer ship had been hunted down and destroyed, every stronghold captured and demolished, every trace of their presence wiped from existence. In the crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council, the same aliens who had reluctantly asked for human help now sat in stunned silence. The emergency session had been called to hear the final report on the Devourer War, but none of them were prepared for what they learned. Admiral Song Kyung-ho stood at the center of the chamber, his crisp uniform bearing the scars of battle. Around him, holographic displays showed the complete tactical breakdown of the campaign, every battle, every casualty, every strategic decision that had led to total victory. "Casualties were surprisingly light," he stated matter-of-factly. as if discussing shipping schedules rather than the greatest military campaign in galactic history. 3,000 humans killed in action, 8,000 wounded, enemy losses, total extermination. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Council leader Morthax, the proud warrior who had commanded galactic forces for decades, could barely find his voice. He whispered, his forearms trembling. The Devourers destroyed 17 different military forces, species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. How did you succeed where we all failed? Ambassador Tamin stepped forward with the same calm confidence he'd shown 6 weeks earlier. We didn't fight individual battles like you did. We fought a war. There's a significant difference between the two approaches. The Vorthok representative, his breathing apparatus wheezing with stress, leaned forward on his platform. Your species, you've done this before, haven't you? This level of coordination, this systematic approach to warfare, it's not natural. Among ourselves, yes. For millennia, Taman replied simply. We learned that war isn't about who has the better weapons or the stronger individual warriors. It's about who can coordinate their use more effectively across multiple theaters of operation. The Delphine ambassador, her blue skin pale with shock, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. And now, what happens now that the galaxy has seen what humans can do? Taman's smile was diplomatic but carried an undertone that made several aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. Now the galaxy knows what happens when humans stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other. The Republic of Korea, on behalf of all human nations, formally proposes a galactic defense treaty. Under human tactical command, of course. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as species representatives conferred with their home governments. But the outcome was never really in doubt. They had all seen what happened to those who opposed humanity's military machine. The vote was unanimous. As the session ended and the aliens filed out in quiet groups, discussing the implications of what they'd witnessed, Ambassador Taman remained. Behind, he looked up at the holographic displays still showing the complete destruction of the Devourer forces and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage in the most definitive way possible. The age of human dominance had begun. The end.